Yo, yo, it's your boy Bryan-Michael Cox, and this is my Quintessential Gentleman cover shoot. Let me take you back to the very first session that had the aha moment of like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? I grew up in Houston, Texas. I'm from Miami, but I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I grew up with uh, four young ladies that you guys may know. Go by the name of Latavia, Latoya, Kelly, and Beyonce. And when we was growing up, they were called Destiny, and we were fast friends as kids. And they knew that I was aggressively trying to get into the music business as a producer and a songwriter. They were newly signed to Columbia Records. A lot of people didn't know that. I knew because I was in the loop with them. And they gave me a shot. They were like, hey, I used to bug them. Beyonce and Latoya came to my school. I was a senior. They were freshmen. And I used to bug them like, yo, I got a song for you. So when it was time for them to start recording demos with other people, because they were working with the great Dwayne Wiggins, God rest the dead. And when it was time for them to work with other people, Beyonce put my name on the list. Like, hey, let's work with my friend Brian, And we ended up going to the studio and we made like 2 or 3 demos. And I remember being, because before I wanted to be like an artist, like I thought I wanted to be in groups and like Boyz II Men or Jodeci, a guy. I had groups and I was trying. I thought that was my destiny. But then when I had this session with them, and it was literally Beyonce and Kelly, and we were giving them, giving them notes and giving them, riffs, and they were learning the song, and it was coming out better than I even thought I could imagine it. I was like, oh no, this is my destiny. Being a music producer is my destiny. And I knew it before that, but that actually made it real. It was like, oh, I don't want to be an artist. I don't want to be, what I'm saying? I want to be a music producer. I want to write songs for people. And that was the session that actually prompted me to really go after my dream properly. There are a few records that I've made that I knew when we heard it that it was going to be a monster. Not many, not many. I make a lot of records, and you just hope. You know what I'm saying? Like I could tell you that when we made Where the Party At, I was just hoping that we just make records and hopefully it'd be a hit. And then when Nelly got on it was like, oh, this is going to be a hit. Because you make so many records and you feel like some records I felt it was going to be a hit and didn't become a hit. Um, but I would say a very, very big moment for me was when we made Be Without You for Mary J. Blige. And even the process of making the song, we knew the song was special, but it didn't. I was like making so many songs during that period. It was like, you know, it, hopefully the masses will get it. And when we mixed the song, I'll never forget this. I was in New York working with Joe and Ron Fair, who is the guy who was the chairman of Geffen Records at the time, and he also was the guy who tweaked the vocals and he did the string arrangements and all the things. He actually helped me finish the production of Be Without You, and he was mixing in LA with Dave Pensada. And this is 2005. This is before we can, it wasn't FaceTime and all that stuff wasn't readily available at the time. So what they would do was the studios had this thing called eNet. So you could basically send files through this thing called eNet. So they were at Larrabee Studios, and I was at Zomba Studios in New York, and we were eNet and passes back and forth. And the very last pass of the Mary J. Blige Be Without You mix, I'm in the studio with Joe, but we were taking a break. This is the day that T-Pain got signed to Jive Records. So we're taking a break. Divine Stevens, who's a great friend of mine, Akon, who's a great friend of mine, his brother Boo, who's a great friend of mine, they were down there shopping T-Pain. T-Pain gets signed. That's a whole nother story. because I was in the room. Me and my cousin Kendrick were in the room, and we helped T-Pain get signed. That's another story. Come in. I'm like, yo, y'all are here. Let me play you this. I got the last pass of this Mary record. I want y'all. We're gonna hear it together. Press play on the record. At the end of the song, you could hear a pin drop. It was like in the studio. It was like 10 people in the studio. Everybody was just quiet. And then Akon says, yo, that's the best shit I ever heard in my life. You know what I'm saying? It was like, yo, I've never heard nothing that good in my life. And I was like, and my mind was like, oh, this song's I mean, I've done a lot of records at that point that had changed my life up until that point, from Jagged Edge to Usher to Mariah and things of that nature. But the Mary thing was like, oh no, this is going to really change my life. Like, it felt like, oh, this is crazy. Like, it was like the moment, the timing was perfect, everything about it was perfect. So yeah, when I heard that song, it was like, oh yeah, I'm going to the bank and the Grammys. So I was having a meeting with Peter Thea at Jive Records. Peter Thea was an executive, a high-ranking executive at Jive Records. Arista Records had folded into Jive Records when they let L.A. Reid go before L.A. Reid went to Def Jam. So we were in the middle of Confessions. Confessions had came out, and then Arista had a blow up, and they moved. And L.A. was out. He went to Def Jam, and they moved all the Arista stuff to Jive Records, right? So now we're in the middle of doing all this stuff for Usher, for Arista. Now we got to talk to people at Jive. I'm at Jive Records talking to Peter Thea about something random, and then the Usher thing comes up. We talk about My Boo. My Boo was on the album initially. He says, yo, what do you think about this song, My Boo? I said, it should have been on the first album. I didn't even write on My Boo, but I was like, this song was a smash. So we're talking about that, whatever. I have a friend named Memphis who was A&R at Arista, and then when Arista closed, he ended up going to work at Jive. As I'm walking, and Mark Pitts moved over to Jive too. As I'm walking out of the office with Peter Thea, Memphis grabs me and my cousin Kendrick, like, hey, we about to do the showcase with this guy I'm trying to sign, T-Pain. Boo and Akon are bringing him down here. You want to sit in the meeting? I said, yeah, sit in the meeting. Me and Kendrick go sit in the meeting. They pull a TV in and they show us this whole thing of like T-Pain Sprung was popping, like in, all of Florida was popping, south of Georgia. He was killing the game, right? And it's showing like a video of him performing like some high school, and the kids going crazy. And then they just bring him in. They bringing him and his homeboy in, and then they perform I'm Sprung right in front of us. He like 2 or 3 songs go crazy. And I'm like, yo, this guy's ridiculous. Like, I was like, you produced that? You wrote that? You did all that by yourself? He was like, yeah, whatever. Walks out the room. Barry Weiss, who was the chairman of Jive Records at the time, he goes around the table like, what do you guys think? Should we sign this kid? And he asked me first. And I was like, yo, Barry, if you don't sign this kid, you guys are crazy. You're crazy if you don't sign this guy. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, after that, Mark and Memphis were already on. They were the one trying to get him signed. They went around after I said what I said, and next thing you know, they signed the kid. He blew up. He nice T-Pain. I always say that songs are in the conversation. I learned that lesson very early from my mentor, Jermaine Dupri, my guy, Usher Raymond, when we did You Got It Bad. I learned that songs in the conversation. I can say that I did a record for Kelly Rowland on a Destiny's Fulfilled album called Bad Habit. And that song was directly from a conversation that was an unexpected conversation. Okay, because I went down there. They were working on the last Destiny's Child album. They wanted to kind of bring everybody who had been a part of the journey back to the fold. I made a name for myself, so I was at that point. I'm glad I was on the short list of people from home that, I made a name for myself. So, I was working on something totally different. I wanted to do like an up-tempo thing for Kelly. Initially, I thought they all were going to be there. I got to the studio, which is Kelly, which is fine. And I wanted to do some up-tempo, and I'm trying to do some tempo. And Kelly wasn't really feeling it, So we take a break, and we're watching videos, music videos. And Mace had just came back. The Welcome Back era, like the video Welcome Back and came back. And there's a guy who used to work with Mace, who she was involved with. She was like in a really like a serious relationship with, and his face came up on the TV, and her whole demeanor changed. So we let the video go, cut the video, say, "Yo, what was that about?" And she just started telling me the whole story, things I didn't know about them, things that was just crazy I didn't know, and I was like, "Oh, this is a song." So from that, I was like, "Y'all got this track. I'm gonna play you this track." Me and my cousin Kendrick get this track. I'm gonna play the track, and I'm telling you, I'm gonna write the song. Play the track for her. She let the track, and I was like, "Give me an hour." And I took everything that she gave me, and I wrote this song, "Bad Habit." And when she came back, she was like, "Oh my God, this is the song I want." And she cut the song. So yeah, that's a great example of how a conversation turns into a record. Technology has definitely evolved through the years. I think that what I miss the most, there are a lot of things I miss about how we made records back in the day. But I think what I miss the most is the sound of tape, the sound of actual instruments on tape, or drum machine levels hitting tape, or a keyboard hitting tape. There's a natural saturation of tape. There's a natural thing. So when you listen to a record like, I can compare my own records in regards to that, right? So it's to a record like Creepin', Ideal's Creepin'. When I listen to that record, I could hear the warmth. I could hear the tape. I could hear, like, it wasn't a lot of, the computers was only the MPC, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever I was using the sequence. But everything went to tape. Vocals went to tape. You could hear the warmth. When I hear those old Jagged Edge records, you could hear the tape. I don't know if the consumer can hear it, but I can hear it. And I hear the difference. I hear the actual depth of whatever the sounds are. Where, now it is a challenge to get that same sound, because that same kind of thing. I think the best example of it in modern history is, like, God bless, rest in peace, D'Angelo. I think when D'Angelo made Black Messiah, or Daft Punk making, Get Lucky, you take those two albums, they don't sound like, it's something about those two albums that don't feel like everything else that's out, even though it's new. You know what I mean? Because they use tape. Like, if you go look up Daft Punk when they were making Random Access Memories, they did that the old school way. You look up D'Angelo's Black Messiah album, it was all tape. So I think that, for me, that's the one thing that. But on the other side of it, Pro Tools makes it easier for us to make records fast and cut. You know what I mean? So it's easier. It's better. It's more efficient to make records now. Tape just took forever. You got to wait for the rewind. You might miss a punch. But that's what make tape just was special. The sound of tape was special. D'Angelo. I'm still processing it. You know what I mean? It's a lot. It's not even about even personally knowing somebody, right? It's about somebody being the fabric of your life, like the fabric of the soundtrack of your life, the fabric of what was happening. Like, Brown Sugar came out in 95. I graduated high school in 96. That whole thing, I remember hearing Brown Sugar, going to the record store to buy the cassette single, listening to the snippets, because back in the day, people don't know, you would get a cassette single. It'd be the single on one side, on the B side, it'd be previews of the album. You know what I'm saying? And being like, so I remember Erykah Badu's. So I remember you'd hear these songs. I can't wait for the album to come out, because I gotta hear the rest of Me and Those Dreaming Eyes of Mine. I gotta hear the rest of When We Get By. I gotta hear the rest of Higher. I gotta hear the rest of Late. I gotta hear the rest of these songs. So for me, it's more than just losing somebody who I knew and I met and I deem as a genius because you've been in a room with him and you just watch him. You don't want to touch nothing. You just like, you know what I mean? You got it. You know what I'm saying? It's somebody who actually helped define helped define who I became as a man, you know, who I became as a person. Um, and you can't equate uh, the magnitude of the loss, especially not knowing. Nobody knew that he was struggling through that. You just felt like, he is an elusive one. So you feel like, oh, he's gone for a few years. He'll come back. He work on a new album. He was going to do Roots Picnic. Oh, he backed out. Okay, cool. I mean, D'Angelo, D'Angelo's one of those artists you feel like, yeah, we won't see him for 5 years, but when he come back, he's coming back. And for you to know that he's not coming back is a very, very tough pill to swallow as a fan. You know what I mean? But we have his music, we have his legacy, but that loss is bigger than music. It's bigger than it's life. We lost somebody. When I think back on the past 20 plus years, it's really gratitude. When the emotion I have is gratitude, because when I was younger, I didn't have a plan B. Like for me, I've always wanted to be a songwriter and music producer. That was something I always talked about doing. Anybody knows me from home back when I was a youngin', they knew that was my passion. So it's gratitude, eternal gratitude. Records like Confessions, Be Without You, and Shake It Off represent to me today uh, longevity, and the power of being present, right? I think that especially those three specific records, I have vivid memories of how those records were created, and why they were created, and when they were created, and we were in the moment. I don't think that when you make a record like Confessions, or you make a record like Shake It Off, or you make a record like Be Without You, and the common denominator in those records, is myself, Jermaine Dupri, and Jonte Austin. I think that ultimately it's just us being present in the moment of creating and us enjoying each other's company. You know what I'm saying? I think that ultimately you have to have an environment where you actually enjoy each other's company, where you are the guard is down enough to have these kind of conversations and talk about whatever you need to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So just being present, I think, personally, and longevity, because those songs are still here. I mean, that's why I'm talking to you guys right now. You know what I'm saying? Because of records like that. I've had a lot of milestones in my life over the past 25 years of me being in the music business. And each milestone is something special for me. There was a milestone where I broke the Beatles record. I was on the chart for 6 years straight. There was a milestone where, we had the longest #1 record on R&B chart. There's another milestone where Be Without You is the greatest R&B song of all time, according to Billboard. Most recently, there's a milestone where I'm the #2 hot R&B hip hop producer of all time, right under my mentor, my brother Jermaine Dupri. That just happened this year. Another milestone is the top 25, hip hop. I'm sorry, top 25 Hot 100 producers of all time on Billboard. This is all data. The reason why I appreciate those milestones is because it's not opinion based. It's based on the actual work. So I get to talk. I'm not a person that really brags or talks but if you talk your shit, I don't really talk my shit like that. I've been in this business a long time, and I stayed long, kept firing. You know what I mean? So I think that the most recent milestones are probably the most endearing to me, because all of my milestones have been database, but to have a totality of data and to still be at the top of the list after all these years, and to continue to still make records at the level that we're making records, I think that the most recent Billboard thing that happened. Us being number one, number two on the how R&B hip hop charts, and me being in the top 25 for top 100. I think those are probably the most endearing ones for me right now. And as the time goes by, it'll probably change. You know, still working, so you never know what may happen in the next 5 years. I want to define my legacy as a person that gave uh, as much energy to uplifting the contemporary R&B space that I could. I think that um, there are a lot of producers. Well, not a lot. There are a few producers who are synonymous with the term contemporary R&B, which came like in the late '90s. You know, if you Google it, contemporary R&B came about 97, 98. And I think that, you know, there are a few producers at the top of that list. And the fact that I'm at the top of that list, I'd like to have my legacy continue to be a person that actually was a forefather and a person who was a continual supporter of the advancement of contemporary R&B.